So after I shined the light on it and I stopped for a second to look at it, and it took a few seconds to register what I was looking at, and about the time I realized what I was looking at, it felt like I had been hit in the back.
The courtroom went silent. Diana Lovejoy sat straight in her chair, shoulders back, chin lifted. Her lips curved into a small smile. Not nervous, not afraid. Confident, like she already knew how this would end. The jury foreman stood, paper trembling in his hands. The judge leaned forward. Greg Mulvihill sat 3 rows back, his hand gripping the wooden bench until his knuckles turned white. Diana's lawyer whispered something. She didn't move. That smile stayed locked in place. Then the prosecutor nodded to the bailiff. A screen lit up on the courtroom wall. Blue light flooded the room. Diana's eyes shifted. Just slightly. The smile flickered. For half a second, something else crossed her face. Fear. The foreman opened his mouth, and Diana's body dropped. One moment upright. The next collapsed forward. Head hitting the table with a dull thud that echoed through the silent room. Gasps erupted. The judge stood. Bailiffs rushed forward. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Greg didn't move. He stared at the woman who once shared his bed, his home, his son. The woman who smiled at him across dinner tables. The woman who tried to have him killed. The screen still glowed, and on it, footage that would destroy everything Diana built. Her attorney shouted for a medic. The jury sat frozen. One woman covered her mouth. Another wiped her eyes. But the question hanging in that courtroom wasn't about Diana's collapse. It was about what that video showed. What truth finally broke through her mask. And why the woman who controlled every moment, every word, every tear, suddenly lost all control when the evidence started playing. Was that collapse real? Or was it her final performance? Southern California, early 2000s. Diana met Greg at a community center fundraiser. She laughed at his jokes. He liked her energy. Simple, easy, normal. They dated for months before he proposed. She said yes without hesitation. The wedding was small. Friends said they looked happy. Photos showed them smiling on beaches, holding hands at sunset. In 2012, their son was born. Tiny fingers, big eyes. Greg cried in the delivery room. Diana held the baby close, whispering promises. For a while, everything worked. Greg went to work. Diana stayed home. They argued sometimes, like all couples do, but nothing serious, nothing violent. Neighbors saw them at barbecues, school events, grocery stores, just another family. But Greg noticed things, small things. Diana checked his phone when he showered. She asked where he went, who he talked to, why he was late. He thought it was normal worry, stress from being a new mum. He didn't realize it was control. And control, once it starts, doesn't stop. It grows, it tightens, it chokes. By 2014, the cracks weren't small anymore. The fights got louder. Diana accused Greg of lying about money, about where he went after work, about women who didn't exist. He tried to explain. She didn't listen. She filed papers, divorce, custody, restraining order. Greg stood in a lawyer's office, confused, angry, terrified. The allegations hit him like bullets. Abuse, danger to their child, threats, none of it true. All of it documented, child services investigated. They found nothing. Therapists interviewed their son. No signs of trauma from Greg. The court dismissed her claims, but Diana didn't stop. She filed more motions, more allegations, more emergency hearings. Greg owed her money from the settlement, $120,000. Money he didn't have, money she demanded immediately. Friends told him to stay calm. Lawyers told him to be patient. But patience doesn't work when someone wants you gone. Diana grew thinner. Her face looked sharper. Her eyes darted when people spoke. She stopped smiling in public, started whispering to herself in parking lots. And then she found someone who understood her fear, or claimed to. The shooting range smelled like gunpowder and sweat. Diana signed up for self-defense classes. Protection, she told the instructor. Safety, just in case. Weldon McDavid stood at the front of the room. Former Marine. Broad shoulders, steady hands, voice that commanded attention without shouting. He taught her how to hold a pistol, how to breathe, how to aim. She came back every week, then twice a week, then 3 times. Other students noticed her staying after class, talking to Weldon in the corner, laughing at things that weren't funny, touching his arm when she spoke. Weldon listened. She told him about Greg, about the custody fight, about how scared she felt, how trapped, how desperate. He nodded, offered advice, told her she was strong, told her she deserved better. Investigators would later call it grooming, manipulation, emotional dependency. But in those moments, Diana saw something else. She saw someone who believed her, someone who didn't question her story, someone who might help her win. And winning, for Diana, meant Greg had to disappear. September 1st, 2016. Greg's phone buzzed at 8 p.m. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but custody cases made him paranoid. Every call could be important. He pressed the green button. A man's voice, calm, professional, said he had evidence, photos, documents, proof that Diana lied in court, hidden on a trail in Carlsbad. Come tonight. Come alone. Bring one person if you want. But no police. Greg's stomach tightened. It sounded wrong, too convenient, too perfect. But he was drowning. The legal bills piled up. Diana kept filing motions. He was losing time with his son. If this evidence existed, he needed it. He called his friend Javon, told him about the call. Javon said, "Don't go." Greg said he had to. They drove to Carlsbad as the sun dropped below the hills. The dirt trail stretched into darkness. No streetlights, no houses nearby. Just trees and shadows and silence. Javon grabbed Greg's arm. "This feels wrong." Greg nodded, but he kept walking. Somewhere in those trees, a rifle scope glinted in the moonlight, and the man holding it had already decided Greg wouldn't leave that trail alive. The flash came first, bright, blinding. Then the crack of the rifle split the air. Greg's body jerked sideways. Pain exploded through his torso like fire spreading under his skin. He hit the ground hard. Dirt filled his mouth. Javon screamed his name. Greg couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His hand went to his side. Wet. Warm. Blood soaked through his shirt. Another shot rang out. The bullet tore past Javon's head, missing by inches. Javon grabbed Greg's arm and yanked. Move, now! They scrambled behind a cluster of rocks. Greg's vision blurred. His ears rang. Javon pressed his hand against the wound. Greg groaned. Stay with me. Javon pulled out his phone. Shaking fingers, 911. The dispatcher asked questions. Javon shouted answers. Location, gunshot, bleeding, shooter still out there. Greg's breath came in short gasps. He turned his head toward the trees. Darkness. Silence. Whoever fired those shots was gone. Or waiting. The pain sharpened. Greg realized something that made his chest tighten worse than the bullet wound. This wasn't random. This wasn't a robbery. Someone called him here. Someone knew he'd come. Someone wanted him dead. Not scared. Not threatened. Dead. Sirens wailed in the distance. Javon kept pressure on the wound. Greg stared at the sky. Stars blinked above him. And somewhere in Carlsbad, Diana Lovejoy sat in her home, phone in hand, waiting for confirmation that her problem was solved. But Greg didn't die, and that mistake would cost her everything. Detectives arrived at the hospital before dawn. Greg lay in a bed, tubes running from his arms, bandages wrapped around his torso. They asked questions. He answered slowly. The phone call, the trail, the voice, the setup. One detective wrote everything down. The other made calls. By noon, they had the phone number. Prepaid. Bought 3 days before the shooting. They pulled surveillance footage from the store. A woman. Thin. Blonde hair pulled back. Sunglasses inside. She paid cash. The clerk remembered her. Nervous energy. Kept looking at the door. Detectives ran the footage through facial recognition. Match. Diana Lovejoy. They dug deeper. Phone records. Text messages. GPS data. Diana's location pinged near Carlsbad the night of the shooting. So did another phone. Registered to Weldon McDavid. Former Marine. Firearms instructor. Close relationship with Diana. The pieces locked together. Motive. Custody battle. Financial pressure. $120,000 owed. Opportunity. The mysterious phone call. The isolated location. Means. Weldon's military training. Access to weapons. Precision shot in darkness. Detectives brought them both in for questioning. Diana cried. Said she knew nothing. Said Greg was dangerous. Said she feared for her life. Weldon stayed quiet. Lawyer present. No comment. But the evidence didn't need their confessions. The digital trail told the story their mouths wouldn't. Arrest warrants were signed. And Diana's carefully constructed victim narrative started crumbling. The trial began on a cold morning. Cameras lined the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted questions. Diana walked past them, head down, tissue pressed to her eyes. Inside, the courtroom filled quickly. Greg sat in the third row. His son stayed with family. Too young to see this. Too young to understand that his mother tried to kill his father. The prosecution laid out the case. Timeline. Phone records. Surveillance footage. GPS data. Witness testimony. Greg took the stand. His voice cracked when he described the trail. The shot. The blood. The realization that someone he once loved wanted him erased. Diana watched him. Her face shifted between expressions. Tears when the jury looked. Blank stares when they didn't. At one point she smiled. Just for a second. A small curl of her lips, when Greg stumbled over a word. Jurors noticed. One woman leaned forward, another frowned. The defense argued fear, abuse, self-preservation, painted Diana as a desperate mother protecting herself. But the evidence didn't support it. Child services found no abuse. Therapists found no trauma. The restraining order was dismissed. Every allegation investigated. Every claim disproven. Weldon's lawyer tried a different angle. Manipulation. Claimed Diana used him. Played on his protective instincts. Made him believe Greg was a threat. The prosecution countered. Showed texts. Planning. Coordination. Two people working together. Both guilty. Days passed. Testimonies ended. Closing arguments finished. The jury deliberated. And Diana sat in that courtroom, shoulders straight, smile ready, convinced she'd walk free. The jury filed back in, faces blank. No eye contact with the defendants. Bad sign. Diana's lawyer whispered. She nodded. That smile still there. Confident, untouchable. The judge asked the foreman to stand. Paper unfolded. We, the jury, find the defendant, Diana Lovejoy. Pause. Guilty. Of attempted murder. Guilty. Of conspiracy. The word hit the room like thunder. Gasps. Whispers. Greg closed his eyes, but the prosecution wasn't done. The bailiff wheeled in a screen. Blue light filled the courtroom. Footage played. Surveillance video of Diana buying the prepaid phone. Date stamped. Time stamped. Clear as day. Then GPS maps. Red dots showing her location. Weldon's location. The trail in Carlsbad. All matching. All coordinated. A timeline reconstruction. Her movements. His movements. The phone call. The ambush. Every piece connected. Diana stared at the screen. Her smile vanished. Color drained from her face. Her lawyer touched her arm. She didn't respond. The video kept playing. Evidence she thought would never surface. Proof she thought was hidden. Mistakes she thought were covered. The jury watched. Some shook their heads. Others looked away. And then Diana's body moved. Not controlled. Not planned. She pitched forward. Head struck the table. Loud. Heavy. Final. Screams erupted. The judge stood. Bailiffs rushed forward. Medics were called. Cameras captured everything. The collapse. The chaos. The moment a woman who spent months controlling every tear, every word, every performance, lost all control. Greg sat motionless, watching, wondering. Was it real? Or was this her last act? Her final attempt to rewrite the story? The courtroom would debate that question for years, but the verdict didn't change. Sentencing came weeks later. Diana recovered, returned to court. No smile this time. No tears either. Just silence. The judge read the sentence. 26 years to life. For attempting to murder the father of her child. For conspiring to end a life over money and custody. Weldon received 50 years to life. The shooter, the one who pulled the trigger, the one whose military precision almost succeeded. Greg stood outside the courthouse after. Reporters asked how he felt. He said he felt tired, tired of fighting, tired of fear, tired of looking over his shoulder. He went home to his son, explained as much as a child could understand. Mommy made a bad choice. A very bad choice. And now she has to stay away for a long time. The boy cried, asked when he did see her. Greg didn't have an answer. Psychologists later analyzed the case. The collapse, the smile, the performance. Some said it was genuine shock. Reality finally breaking through denial. Others said it was calculated. A final manipulation attempt. A bid for sympathy. The truth? No one knows. Maybe not even Diana. Years passed. Greg raised his son alone, went to therapy, learned to trust again. Slowly, carefully. The boy grew up knowing both his parents changed his life forever. One tried to kill. One survived. And that night on the Carlsbad Trail lived in both their memories. A reminder that desperation, control, and bitterness can push someone past the point of humanity, past reason, past morality. The question isn't whether Diana deserved her sentence. The evidence answered that. The question is how far fear can drive a person, how much a custody battle is worth, and whether losing control of a narrative is worse than losing your freedom, your child, your soul. Diana sits in prison now, still claiming victimhood, still insisting Greg was the threat, still believing, perhaps, her own story. But the video played, the jury decided, and the woman who smiled in court, thinking she was untouchable, learned that truth doesn't care about performance. If this story made you think, drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Share your thoughts. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Because there are more truths to uncover. More cases that shock. More moments that make us question how well we really know the people around us. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment. Let's keep this conversation going. Your voice matters. Your perspective inspires others. And together, we can shine light on the stories that need to be told.